Friday night MLB chat. And I hope everybody's weekend's already off to a great start. Bear with me, we'll be back in just 1 second here. Hopefully it won't be too much longer here, and we'll be logged on here. We'll be able to answer everybody's questions. Pardon me. As I clear my throat. There we go. So we're getting logged on here. I can see now that we're slowly getting live. I see some questions coming up here already. So that's always a nice start there. And yeah, questions coming up about Jays getting a number 2 starter. First off, I hope everybody's doing awesome. Their weekend's off to a great start. Thought we'd come on here, just do a quick Friday night MLB chat. Sorry, I got a little tickle in my throat. I'm going to clear that, take a sip here, and we'll get started. So obviously the big news, Trevor Bauer is off to the Dodgers. Something like 105? It doesn't matter anyways. The first 2 years matters. He's going to opt out after that. So basically the Dodgers are paying Trevor Bauer $85 million, $42.5 million for the next 2 years. That's what's going to happen with Trevor Bauer. I can't see him opting out after next year. Maybe. You never know with Trevor Bauer. He's just a weird character. My question, though, and I did a vlog on this, how is Trevor Bauer going to mesh with Clayton Kershaw? How are those personalities really going to get along? That's what I wonder here. Clayton Kershaw is such a hard-driven player. He's kind of like a weird version of Roy Halladay. Roy Halladay was one of a kind. I mean, that guy got to 5 a.m., got to the clubhouse. I mean, I could go on and talk about Halladay forever. He was my favorite starter. But Clayton Kershaw is a no BS player. And Trevor Bauer has a lot of attitude. Trevor Bauer wants to pitch every 4 days. Are they going to let him do that in Dodgerland? Probably not. Also raises a lot of other questions with the Dodgers, something that I got really excited about, something that I just did a vlog on, and something that leads to the next question, a number 2 starter. As soon as the Dodgers signed Trevor Bauer, I immediately went, okay, their payroll is humongous. What is it at? So I Googled it right away. 139.8, basically 240 million bucks. And you start paying the luxury tax at 20% after 210 million bucks. They are way over, and they still have additions outside of Trevor Bauer to get done. They want to get that third baseman. They want to get Justin Turner back. They need a few pieces for their bench. So that's going to be probably 12 to 15 million bucks in additional monies that the Dodgers have to absorb to really fill out their team. So the rumors started right away, and I did my number crunching on it, and it's about David Price. David Price and the Blue Jays, actually. And the Blue Jays recently do have a bit of history with the Dodgers. We've just made some recent trades with them, so it's not unrealistic that there could be a conversation starting now about David Price. The Dodgers, even before they took on Trevor Bauer, have said that they would look at offers about David Price, but they're very interested in getting rid of his entire monies that's owed to him. And this is what gets really interesting with David Price, because David Price is still owed $64 million over the next 2 years, $32 million a year. Half of that's going to be paid by the Boston Red Sox. So actually, David Price is only getting paid $16 million. So that makes you go, especially if the Jays are considering signing somebody like Jake Odorizzi for 3 years at $15 million. Is David Price a better deal? Maybe less risk because you're only going to have to absorb his $16 million over 2 years. Something to chew on. Even Taijuan Walker's holding out for a 2-year, $15 million, or 2 years at $15 million a year. So $30 million for Taijuan Walker. That's kind of close to David Price. Now, who would you rather have, David Price or Taijuan Walker? Really, the only kind of cheaper version here is Paxton, who's still looking at 10 to 12 million bucks, and he wants a 2-year deal, and that's what's holding out his signing. And he might even get that at this point. So what I'm trying to say here, rambling on, that's why I call it Baseball Rambles, is all these contracts might be equivalent to what the Blue Jays would pay David Price. And this what gets really interesting with the Dodgers now. Because David Price isn't like a number 1, 2, 3, or 4 person on their rotation. He's number 5. They also have 2 young, solid pitchers who are coming up. They're just 1 year away. They need 1 more year, and they'd probably be ready if there was actually a minor league system last year, but there wasn't. So if the Dodgers do trade away David Price, they actually need another pitcher to come on board. Somebody super cheap, somebody that's dependable, that could eat up innings, somebody even cheaper than what the Rays signed Chris Archer for $6.5 million. That might be hard to find. That's why the Jays' name's coming up. Why? Tanner Roark. We send Tanner Roark off to the Dodgers. The Blue Jays absorb $7 million of Tanner Roark's contract. In return, the Dodgers send us David Price. Simple as that. We don't have to ship away any of our prospects. Maybe we have to give away some small prospect on top of Tanner Roark, but certainly nobody in even the top 10 or even 15 in the Jays system. So it's very interesting there. Now, over the 2 years, if the Jays do eat up $7 million of Tanner Roark's contract, means the Jays are going to be paying about $19.5 million a year for David Price, so a tiny bit of an overpay. But the Jays are actually shopping Tanner Roark right now. That's a rumor. The rumor is also that the Jays are willing to eat half of Tanner Roark's contract, and they're looking for just some sort of prospect or bullpen piece in return. So really, does that $6-7 million matter? Probably not. Would David Price, if he had a bounce back year, be amazing? Absolutely. Let's look at David Price in his 2018 numbers, before that cyst came up on his wrist. He was actually back throwing .358 ERA, 16 wins, a WAR 4.2. That's awesome. That's everything you want actually in a solid number 2 starter. That's why I'm like, David Price is interesting here. Why did David Price get shut down in 2019? Well, it had nothing to do with his elbow or his shoulder. Some of the things that maybe make you wary. Some of the few things that he's had injuries with the past. No, it was an actually weird cyst that came up on his wrist that unfortunately had to be surgically removed, and that's what shut him down. Why didn't David Price pitch last year? Well, maybe he was coming back from that wrist injury, but a lot of it had to do with the fact that he had a brand new newborn child and another young child in his household, and he was adamant and very scared about bringing COVID in. That's not a question this year, he said. He's feeling very much better about that. Maybe they got the vaccines. I don't know. I'm not going to talk about vaccines. But the point is, David Price is ready to go. On top of that, if you've seen some of the video that David Price has done recently online, it is crazy. Why? Because he is looking good. He's looking Vladdy good, actually. And that's what makes me go, well, maybe David Price is primed for a rebound. Even if David Price pitched at like 3.8 ERA, even a 4.0 ERA, that's still comparable and probably much better than we could get out of Mateo Juan Walker. Certainly better than we're going to get out of Jake Odorizzi. I don't know about Paxton, because Paxton does have some upside. The issue with James Paxton, if we're talking about a number 2 starter, and to pivot away about this David Price ramble that I'm going on, is with Paxton, it comes down to, is he going to be healthy? And I guess the same thing could be said about Price. But Paxton has never pitched a full season, pardon me as I clear my throat, ever. His entire career. He's never pitched 32 games. He's never pitched 30 games in an entire season. The one thing you can count on Big Maple is when he's healthy, he is dominant, he pitches hard, but he also gets hurt every single season. Just checking my audio here for 1 second, guys. There we go, just making sure. Sorry about that. So that's the issue with James Paxton. What are we going to do there? How are we going to do it? And that's why I say David Price might be an interesting option. And one last thing I want to say about David Price, as I said, I know I was going to be quiet about him, is if we did bring on that $19 million, it's only going to bring our budget up to $155, $156 million. So we still got room to make that Sonny Gray trade done. And imagine if that's going to cost us somebody decent, like a Rowdy Tellez or an Alejandro Kirk or somebody high level. But imagine if we had Ryu, followed by Sonny Gray, followed by David Price, Robbie Ray, and then Ross Stripling and Nate Pearson as our number 5, plus the bullpen that we've added, plus this awesome lineup. Wow. Wow. That's better than the Yankees. That's just too easy move that the Jays management would have to do to get this deal done. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Marcell Ozuna is coming back to the Atlanta Braves, folks. If you don't know, that deal just got done just as I was going online here. I believe it's going to be $65 million over 4 years, plus an additional year, so it could top out 5 years, $80 million. So I think there's some sort of additional bonus if they don't go for that 5th year. So it's probably going to be 4 years, a little bit higher than $65 million. Kind of close to the qualifying offer, but that's going to be very interesting for Atlanta. And why do I say that? Well, it looks like there's going to be no decision on this universal DH. And Marcell Ozuna has declined defensively. He's certainly got a good year or two left in him. 4 or 5 years? I don't know. And that's what's going to make it interesting. Really, this contract's riding out on whether or not a universal DH does eventually come into the National League, I suppose. If it does, then that's going to make this contract certainly very valuable. If not, it could be something that Alex Anthopoulos might regret. But that's one of the things that I'm looking at when I see Atlanta's roster coming together is they got a decent lineup. They got a great rotation. But in a couple of years, they're still going to be paying some high value to some very aged players. And that's a little bit scary. And additionally to that, if Atlanta Braves don't keep up with the New York Mets, the Padres, or the Dodgers, is this going to be some wasted years in Atlanta? I don't know. And then when Alex Anthopoulos does leave, are the cupboards going to be bare, just like it was in Toronto? I don't know. Let me know what you think on that. I'm very curious. So, but yeah, it's all going to be whether or not the DH is brought back in. And the new, Derek just said the new collective agreement's coming true, so I'll be interested to see what happens there. I was really excited, too, about when they came up with the 154-game season proposal. I think it was 154 games. What really excited me about that was this expanded playoffs. Now, I said I'm not sure if the Jays are going to get into the playoffs this year. Sorry. If it's not an expanded playoffs, it's going to be a tough bunch catching that wild card. Jays certainly can do it. It's going to be a tougher road, but I like the idea of the expanded playoffs. And the other thing that I go into the expanded playoffs is I think there has to be some adjustments done with the new collective bargaining agreement, because it goes back to this Trevor Bauer here. And it goes, why do I think they'll regret the Bauer signing? Well, I'll go into Trevor Bauer here in a second, and I might be a little bit hard on him, so I'll admit that. Maybe there's some bias there. Because there's no denying that when Trevor Bauer was pitching last year, boy, oh boy, he was just unbelievable, dominant, scary every time he was out. But to go back to what I was originally talking about, what's going to happen when contracts keep ballooning up to $40, $45 million a year for these star players? How's that going to affect the small market teams? And I'm not talking about the Blue Jays necessarily, because the Blue Jays actually have been pretty decent with their payroll. It's for the last couple of years, it's been usually over $100 million when they were competitive. It certainly was around $150 million, I believe, when we were back with the Batista, Edwin Encarnacion, Donaldson days. So I've never really complained that bad about the Jays and payroll. But if you're somebody who lives in maybe Minnesota, or you're somebody down in Tampa Bay, or one of these really small market teams, what happens when you see the Dodgers go out and spend it's going to be $42.5 million for 2 years at least for Trevor Bauer? Is that really discouraging as an organization? Is it even more discouraging as a fan base being out in Tampa Bay or down in Oakland? And I'm not saying nothing against Oakland or Tampa Bay's ownership, but I guess it comes down to salary cap. And I don't think there'll ever be a salary cap in baseball, so that's a little bit unfortunate. So you'll see these contracts ballooning. And the reason why I don't think there'll ever be a salary cap in baseball is it comes down to revenue sharing. The only way the players would ever even sniff at a salary cap is if Major League Baseball as a whole really opens up their books and shares the revenue a little bit more graciously with the players. Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to money. And the players really believe, pardon me, if the revenue sharing isn't in place or isn't as honest or as balanced as they'd like to be, then the only way that they can get it back is by sticking it to the ownership with these big contracts. And again, that makes it very disheartening if you're an Oakland Athletics fan. And if I was an Oakland Athletics fan and I see somebody spending $42.5 million, I'd be like, oh, wow. I don't know how much Oakland's payroll is going to be next year, but it's probably 1/3 of the Dodgers. And why will the Dodgers regret Bauer? This is my issue with Trevor Bauer. I think Trevor Bauer was really overmarketed this year. And kudos to Trevor Bauer for marketing himself in that way. Because anybody who can go out and push himself to get himself a contract that's probably going to pay him $42.5 million. I keep saying $42.5 million because I don't know how the third year of his contract works out, but he's going to opt out of it anyways. I don't think he's going to opt out of the first year, so he's going to take that $85 million over the 2 years. So I say $42.5 million. This is what's going to happen with the Dodgers now. Trevor Bauer says, yes, Dodgers are going to have an awesome year. They're probably going to go head-to-toe with the Padres for who's going to compete in the World Series for that division. But in this offseason, the Dodgers are going to now have to sit down and have an honest conversation with Clayton Kershaw. And I can guarantee you, Clayton Kershaw is going to want $40 million or $42.5 or $43 million. And that's what's going to be the issue. The other thing is, I just said, based on their personalities, it was in Sports Illustrated, and I found it very interesting how they're kind of polar opposites. So I hope as the season goes on, that even though their personalities are so estranged, that they can figure out how to build that as a team camaraderie and really push the Dodgers together. Because the Dodgers lineup is scary, and their rotation is unbelievable. Even if David Price is gone, and I suspect if he's not gone by the time the season starts, he'll be gone by the All-Star break. And that's why the Jays really need to get in on this, because if he does start bouncing back, maybe the Dodgers don't even trade him. They just say, screw it, pardon my language. Who cares about the luxury tax? We're going to win the World Series here. And he's a awesome number 5 who is a 5 who's pitching like a 2. That's what I'm trying to spit out there, pardon me. So for me, it just comes down to the Dodgers maybe now. That ripple effect with Trevor Bauer. Is his personality going to really mesh in that clubhouse? Are they going to let him pitch every 4 days in Dodgerland? I don't think they will. Hopefully Trevor Bauer is okay with that. Trevor Bauer has said in the past that he likes to tell the coaches to a small degree how he likes to be coached and conditioned. So I'm hoping that there's no issues with that. Just goes like, there's a few landmines there. And if they're all avoided, and maybe they're all just rumor and speculation, wow, the Dodgers are going to win. But that other scary number with Trevor Bauer that I always go, and I'm glad it's a small year deal for him, is 6.69. And that was his ERA with his first 10 starts with the Reds. So I really hope he gets off to a good start. I hope it's not one of those years that Trevor Bauer has had in the past where he has an ERA around 4.50. And that's the other thing about Trevor Bauer, because when he is off, it's an ERA around 4.3 to 4.8. And he's had multiple years. And that's why I always say Garrett Cole, to me, was a bit of a better pitcher. And I know that would probably burn Trevor Bauer because of his competition with Garrett Cole. But Garrett Cole, when he has off years, it's like a 3.96 or maybe a 4, but nothing ever like that, and it very seldomly happens. And that's why it comes down to the biggest pitcher right now who I think is being significantly overlooked. And if I was a general manager, would be pounding on the Chicago Cubs door, because I don't know what Chicago Cubs are doing. Certainly looks like they're in rebuild mode now. Maybe they're just waiting to see what happens with Chris Bryant and when he gets shipped out of town. But they have Kyle Hendricks. And Kyle Hendricks is such a solid guy. He has an ERA. It's never gone over 3.50 except for once in his career. He has that personality in the clubhouse that just brings out the best in other people. He's very community oriented. And the guy is only owed between 14 to 16 million bucks over the next 3 or 4 million years. So he's controllable for the next couple of years. I know you might have to pay a little bit deep, but if I was a GM, I would be all over that. Yeah, Cole's cheating scandal. That's an interesting one. I haven't had anything to say on it because I'm still looking into this because I think a lot more is going to come out right now. I don't know if it's just getting overshadowed because of COVID and them trying to figure out this season, but I think it's going to be a thunder. And what I mean by that, it's going to start off like a small storm that you hear coming, and then it's going to be a loud thunder and a huge roar. And I think eventually MLB baseball is going to have to really address this and see what's going on there. And I really hope, because there's numerous pitchers on there as well. I don't have the whole list because I haven't looked at it as deeply as I should. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see what comes out of that and if there's going to be any significant changes. So, yeah, that goes back to Cole. But yeah, Hendricks, I think he's going to be awesome. And I think there are some pitchers, you know, to go back to the original question that somebody asked me, and that was, is there still a number? Who's the other pitcher that the Jays are going to bring in? Is that going to happen? And that's what I said. You know, there's still a lot of avenues the Jays could make with trade. There's Kyle Hendricks available and Sonny Gray. And I think both would be great options. I like Kyle Hendricks a lot. And both of these pitchers have multiple years of control. And I've said out of the past, if we're going to be going a little bit lower for the Jays, if we're looking at somebody like James Paxton, Taijuan Walker, or Jake Odorizzi, my favorite out of those is Paxton. And that has nothing to do with the fact that he's Canadian. That's a bonus if you're a Blue Jays fan. It just happens to do with the fact that I think out of those three, he's the only pitcher that we can get on a one-year deal. And if you're going to take a gamble, let's take a gamble for 1 year. So that's my concern with some of these contracts. And that's why I think Atlanta might go, 4 years with Marcell Ozuna. Is that a little bit high? And I think that's what's holding up some of these other few contracts that haven't signed, because somebody said to me, what is going on with Jackie Bradley Jr.? Why is he not in a Mets lineup yet? And yeah, everybody said Jackie Bradley Jr. was sort of plan B for the New York Mets. Now that they missed out on George Springer and he's going to be suiting up for the Toronto Blue Jays. And for me, it just comes down to multiple years. And that was the big question with a lot of players this year. They're not getting the money that they want. I've actually been pretty impressed with the contracts that have gone out. They've gone much higher than I thought. Most people thought Springer was only going to get 125. He got 150 with the Jays. People thought JT would have a tough time breaking 100. He ended up getting 115 or 118 with the Phillies. So it has been a bit higher, but not necessarily the 200 million bucks that George Springer thought he was originally going to get. So Jackie Bradley Jr. wants a 4-year contract, and I think he's going to use Marcell Ozuna as a bit of a benchmark now. And that's really where the Mets' attention's probably going to go, that they missed out on Trevor Bauer. But don't get me wrong, the Mets, for some strange reason, are adamant about adding another pitcher. So when I was going back and talking about Kyle Hendricks or Sonny Gray, don't count the New York Mets out of that. In fact, the New York Mets could have some sort of knee-jerk reaction to missing out on Trevor Bauer and go hard on one of these guys and maybe overpay to get that deal done and say, hey, look, Dodgers, we got somebody too. So I could see definitely the Mets making another move, but they're certainly going to start concentrating on Jackie Bradley Jr., and I suspect he'll probably be the next big free agent off the board. And then after that, it's just down to the handful of pitchers that are left. A lot of teams are really shaping up for the offseason, or for the season now. I don't think St. Louis or the Reds are necessarily going to make a trade. They don't have to. Luis Castillo certainly not going anywhere this season. And Sonny Gray, maybe they just hold on to Sonny Gray till the All-Star break. Cleveland, I think, is going to perform very well. I've heard Jose Ramirez's name come up multiple times, but I don't think they're going to pull the trigger on him necessarily. But I could see Chris Bryant definitely getting traded in the next week or two. there's still moves to be made. And one of them that was a head scratcher for me was Alex Cobb going off to the Los Angeles Angels. Now, I do know that Baltimore is picking up some of Cobb's contract, but to me, I thought Los Angeles Angels would go after one of the other three, the Paxton, the Walker, the Jake Odorizzi, one of those three. Not make a trade for Alex Cobb. No, I know they didn't really give up anything for him, but to me it was just, that's very interesting. And the Angels, I think, are going to be one of those years for them again, unless they really get another great pitcher in there. It's just going to be a wasted opportunity. And I'm sure Angels fans must be getting very frustrated, especially with having somebody like Mike Trout on there. You just want to see Mike Trout play in the World Series. I think everybody in baseball wants to see that happen. And could you imagine Mike Trout going his entire career without that? Wow. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be a shortened season this year. For some strange reason, I really like the 154 game proposal. And I saw that come up. It had the expanded playoffs. It had everything in place, I thought, to protect the players. I thought the salary was right in line there, and they rejected it. I don't know the specifics of why they rejected it so quickly, but the players seem to be adamant to wanting to start right away. I guess it's going to come down to probably ensuring that they're all vaccinated. I suspect that every player before the season starts will have the 2-shot vaccination completed, so that will certainly help out, at least with the core teams there. I don't know how it's going to impact fans coming in. Maybe they'll spread them out. I'm not too certain there. But they're ready to go. And the Jays, guess, are going to be playing in Dunedin. And I really think that's a shame. I really like what they did up in Buffalo this year. I would love to see them up in Buffalo again. I don't know what the comparisons are between the Dunedin Stadium and the Buffalo Bison Stadium. But either way, it looks like the Jays will be starting off in Florida. And my goal, or at least if I was in the Blue Jays position, was to maybe try to have a game in Toronto with some sort of fans for July 1st. At least that only eliminates half the season or just under half the season for the Jays. And if the Jays are lucky enough to get into postseason contention, well, then it allows them to maybe have some postseason games at home, which would be amazing. Certainly not in a full Skydome or Rogers Center, depending on what you call it at that time. Pardon me, sorry as I do that. But certainly something dynamic and something to get that foot forward for the Blue Jays management and the fans again. I mean, we're really patient up here in Canada, but we want to see some baseball on home soil again. And there's certainly no reason why this can't happen up here in Canada. It just comes back to crossing the border and, the Canadian government just being a little bit worried there, I suppose. But hopefully, as the year progresses on, I'm hoping the conversation in COVID becomes less and less of a conversation. Certainly don't we all. As I wrap up here tonight, sorry, I'm losing my voice here a little bit. I just want to thank everybody coming on here. I'm also thinking about doing a baseball pool, free, just with anybody who's a baseball fan. So if you're interested in that, let me know, because I would love to get like 10 or 12 people together. We'll figure out all the variables on that. But if you are interested, I'm going to put the link in one of my blogs below, or we'll put a link in the comments below this one here. And then we'll figure out a way to communicate. So, yeah, and just to go on, I like DH in the NL. You know what? I'm a pitcher guy. So, for me, when everybody sees a pitcher up there, it's a laugh. And it takes away from the pitching aspect. I love that the pitcher is just a pitcher. And I love that duel. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you see something really amazing, like Bartolo Colon when he hit that home run. I'm still laughing thinking of that. But I agree. Let's just balance it out. If I was looking as a fan, for me, the best things that I could see happen in baseball would be a universal DH, an expanded playoffs, and some sort of harder luxury tax if we're not going to have a salary cap and some sort of harder luxury tax, so it's revenue sharing going to these small teams. So that way when the Dodgers go out and they spend $250 million on a season, it gives somebody else in their division or their league an opportunity to recoup some of that money back even more aggressively than they do now. That's what I would like to see happen in baseball. And maybe more revenue sharing for minor league players who spend their entire lives in AA, AAA, those players that we don't know their names necessarily unless you're a real avid hardcore fan, and really protecting them, especially during COVID times, during times when there's a pandemic or baseball shut down, having contingency plans so that way they get paid as well. So those are the things I hope as I wrap up here. I would love to see expanded playoffs. I just think it would be natural for baseball to really just bring out more. I really liked what they did last year. But maybe I just say that as a Blue Jays fan so we could get into the playoffs more. If you're a Yankees fan or a Dodgers fan, you're like, no, the playoffs are fine just the way they are. Well, that's because we spend $200 million. No, I'm not saying that. Sorry. I mean, look what Tampa did last year and look at their budget. So doesn't necessarily always mean money means wins. At the end of the day, though, I hope everybody stays safe out there. Hit my vlog tomorrow if you get a chance. It's about David Price and the Jays. I know we talked about it at the beginning here. And then the other one that I'm working on for later this week, I saw an article over in St. Louis, and it was recently in Major League Baseball, and that is, can Joey Votto ever be moved with his $25 million, or is he going to be the Chris Sale for that organization? What I mean by Chris Sale, obviously he's a Baltimore Oriole for life, and they're just going to pay him that. I think Chris Sale makes $25 million too. Crazy amount of money. Anyways, check out those vlogs coming up later on. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy out there, and we'll talk soon. Bye now.